The FAA's finally lit the green light after almost 5 years. Finally! On Friday afternoon, after much angst and anxiousness from the spaceflight community, the Federal Aviation Administration issued the highly coveted launch license to SpaceX for the launch of its Starship rocket from South Texas. The agency said in a statement, after a comprehensive license evaluation process, the FAA has determined SpaceX met all safety, environmental, policy, payload, airspace integration, and financial responsibility requirements. The license is valid for 5 years. Receiving this federal safety approval is the final regulatory step the company needed to take before being cleared to fly the largest rocket ever built. Now, the only constraints to launch are technical issues with the rocket or its ground systems. SpaceX is expected to hold a final readiness review this week before deciding to proceed with a launch attempt. This could occur as soon as Monday. The company has a slew of road closures, temporary flight restrictions, and notices to mariners set up for April 17th. The launch window is expected to open at 7 a.m. local time in Texas or 12 o'clock UTC. Backup launch opportunities are available on Tuesday and Wednesday. SpaceX's CEO once again said that success maybe, excitement guaranteed. I have a feeling it might get delayed 3 days. This will surely push Starship's flight test back to April 20th, or 420. A day that Musk has loved for a long time. SpaceX has been seeking federal approval to launch the massive Super Heavy rocket with its Starship upper stage for several years from Texas. The launch site is located near the Gulf of Mexico, just north of the Rio Grande River and surrounded by wetlands. After completing an environmental assessment in June of 2022, the Federal Aviation Administration said the company must undertake more than 75 actions to protect the lands and wildlife around the Boca Chica facility. This week, an official at the FAA, speaking on background, said SpaceX has been cooperating on those measures. So far, they've done what they need to do with regard to environmental impact, the official said. The FAA has responsibility for safety around the launch site and during a vehicle's flight. It has worked through its procedures carefully and accommodated SpaceX as the technical design of the Starship launch system has changed. SpaceX is calling this Starship launch an integrated flight test. It is the first time that the massive Super Heavy rocket will have taken off and the first time both vehicles will fly together. Under the nominal flight plan, the Super Heavy rocket will boost Starship towards space and after separation attempt to make a controlled splashdown into the Gulf of Mexico, about 30 to 30 kilometers off the coast of Texas. SpaceX will not attempt to recover the booster on this flight. In the meantime, the Starship vehicle will attempt to ascend to an altitude of 235 kilometers and become nearly orbital. Starship's engines will shut down at 9 minutes and 20 seconds into the flight, after which the vehicle will coast for more than half an hour before entering Earth's atmosphere over the Pacific Ocean. It will not complete a full orbit and is expected to make a high-velocity splashdown about 225 kilometers north of the Hawaiian island of Oahu. On the nominal timeline, this will occur 90 minutes after liftoff. Because this is the first spaceflight for both vehicles, SpaceX is keeping the overall flight plan relatively simple. For example, Starship will not reignite its engines upon atmospheric re-entry, nor attempt to make a controlled re-entry into the ocean. Essentially, the goal for this flight is to gather data about the performance of both the first stage booster and Starship upper stage in order to begin recovery attempts on future flights. Super Heavy will be the largest and most powerful rocket to ever launch from Earth. However, SpaceX has taken an experimental approach toward developing this booster and Starship, so it is very far from a certainty that this flight will proceed without incident. Regardless of the outcome of this flight, SpaceX is definitely heading for Mars. The company may even lease High Bay 1 in NASA's VAB. Last August, NASA issued an agency announcement asking for industry proposals to lease the vehicle assembly building High Bay 1 at Kennedy Space Center. This is the same iconic building in Florida where NASA stacks its Space Launch System rocket. In November, NASA selected a proposal. However, agency spokeswoman Patty Beeling declined to name the winner, sharing that terms are still being negotiated and the process does not conclude until the parties execute the lease, at which time NASA will announce the selection. Speaking of Starship processing, two people have shared that SpaceX won the competition to use the high bay for its Starship program. The sources said SpaceX does not plan to perform stacking operations inside the VAB, but rather will use the facility for storage and integration of payloads on Starship before the flight. This might be an interim usage by SpaceX while the company develops a larger facility on Roberts Road near the Florida spaceport. It sounds like SpaceX will continue to build Starships in South Texas and ship them to Florida for the time being. Next off, the European Space Agency, aka ESA, has launched its first flagship exploration mission and its first voyage to the outer solar system, an event marking a significant moment for Europe's space endeavors. The Jupiter Ice Moons Explorer spacecraft, or JUICE for short, launched on an Ariane 5 rocket from Kourou, French Guiana on Friday morning, April 14th, beginning its long journey to Jupiter. This is a great day for European space science as a whole for ESA, an emeritus professor and planetary scientist at the Institute for Research in Astrophysics and Planetology in France and a co-investigator on NASA's Juno-Jupiter mission shared. For European space scientists, it's really an opening to great avenues of research. JUICE is an exciting mission in its own right. It builds on previous Jupiter missions and will focus on the Galilean moons Ganymede, Europa, and Callisto. Using its 10 scientific instruments, JUICE will seek to confirm the presence of liquid water in the form of subsurface oceans on these satellites and look for the conditions and ingredients needed for life. It's also significant for Europe, marking a key milestone for it and ESA and its science and exploration activities, said Gabriele Redegonda, a research fellow at the European Space Policy Institute, or ESPI, in Vienna. The mission has a high degree of complexity and difficulty with regard to the tight launch window, the number of planned maneuvers throughout its lifetime, and the extreme environmental conditions, Redegonda said. The high risk taken by ESA with this mission could represent a step ahead in ESA's approach to science missions. The mission could also lead to a soft power boost for Europe, with huge possibilities for science communication and enticing Europeans to pursue an interest in space. JUICE's Janus camera, for instance, will be able to return images of the surface of Ganymede with a resolution of 7.5 meters per pixel when orbiting the moon late in its mission, indicating the potential of the mission's science outreach. And JUICE could generate spin-off technologies from the development of the science instruments as well as the huge solar arrays, which cover a total area of 85 square meters. What the spacecraft will actually see and find is to some extent still a mystery, and the mission will for sure contribute to raise new questions in the scientific community, Redegonda added. JUICE's launch may therefore have just kicked off a much grander voyage for European science. And that's about it for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoy what my team and I are doing, you can become a patron through our Patreon link in the description below. Otherwise, as always, this is Kevin from Great SpaceX, and we'll be seeing you next time.